I woke up Friday morning to a text from a friend of mine from Chicago. And he said, hey, I know that you're currently dating Chana Bassman. I was just in the show this morning, and they announced that Faggy Bassman died suddenly last night. I was in complete shock. I had to take a double and a triple take. Like, wait, this is the mother that you've been talking about in all of our dates.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, you spoke about your mother large parts of our dates. She sounded like the most amazing woman. You guys were so close. Like, that was a huge part of our conversations.
Hi, I'm Chana from Dayinmyjewishlife. I grew up as the youngest of 8, surrounded by larger-than-life personalities. In all the noise, I often held back my own voice. But being the youngest also gave me a gift. The ability to listen, to observe, and to take it all in. And that shaped me into the person that I've become. Eventually, I was able to open up my own Instagram platform, a space to share my voice. I cannot tell you the countless ways that changed me as a person. And that's why I created this podcast, Dayinmyjewishlife Unplugged. Here, we amplify voices that don't always get the mic. You're going to hear stories that are real, unpolished, and full of beautiful meaning. And my hope is that by listening, you're going to discover something that speaks to your journey. So join me here where voices are heard, stories are honored, and every conversation has the power to leave you changed. I honestly couldn't think of a more fitting person to start off my first ever episode on this podcast other than my husband, Meir. In this episode, Meir and I open up about what it was like to begin our marriage just 2 months after my mother passed, so I was in heavy grief. And we discuss the roles of a spouse in a marriage when your spouse is struggling. Meir shared from such a raw and honest place what it was like for him, what he would do different, what he would love to tell any spouse who's on the other end of a struggling spouse and so badly wants to support their spouse. The conversation was so eye-opening for me, even though I was the one who lived it with him. And I just know that so many of you will appreciate and learn an incredible amount from this episode. Hello, Meir.
How's it going?
Good. Baruch Hashem. I'm really excited about this podcast, particularly because I know everything's going to come out raw because you did not see any of the questions.
That is true.
By choice.
Yeah. I would have taken a look. I just didn't really get to it. But I think it's meant to be this way.
Nice. Okay. So let's start from the beginning. Where did you grow up? What was your upbringing like? What was your childhood like? Tell us about yourself.
I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, in a family of 3 boys in a very loving house. Great parents, nice relationship with my brothers, and went to the local public school for most of my life. And then I switched to the private school, college prep school when I was in 10th grade. And yeah, my parents are big into volunteering in the Jewish community. My mother was the director of the Early Childhood Center at the JCC. It was like a classic Jewish upbringing. The JCC was like our central place. That's where I went to camp every summer. That's where I went to preschool. We were so involved. That was our pool every summer. So my upbringing was very much central around cultural Judaism being at the forefront of our identity. And yeah, academics. Ultimately, I always knew the goal was to work towards a successful career, find what I'm passionate in. So I really enjoyed school. I loved intellectual conversations and debating. And I played some sports, tennis, soccer for my high school, and was involved in some of the academic clubs, and overall just really enjoyed my upbringing. I feel I had a very happy, healthy childhood.
Wow. And it sounds like you did. I always look at your childhood whenever things come up or we go back to your hometown. I'm like, wow, you had it made. You had it good.
Yeah,
you
I'm very blessed.
Soccer, any tutor you needed was right at your fingertips. Good for you.
Yeah, no, I'm very lucky.
Okay, so fast forward, when you're 19, you change over your life. Well, obviously, slowly you end up in Israel for my note, and which is what led us to each other, to starting to date and ultimately getting married. So our shidduch, our match, happened like most Hasidic couples. We were set up pretty much by friends, but we brought it to a matchmaker and she looked it over, thought it was great, and we started dating. Can you tell me about your dating experience? What did it feel like for you? And what was it like when you finally met the person that you knew, however many dates in, that you were going to marry? What was that experience like for you?
So for anyone who's listening who doesn't really know how I ended up in a Hasidic dating circle, I'll just quickly say that in brief, in high school, I got involved in C-Teen in my community with Rabbi Matti and Rachel Flickstein, and I started getting closer to Judaism through them. And I ended up taking a gap year. Instead of going to college, I went to Mayonot yeshiva for a year, and my life completely changed there. I never ended up going back to college. I spent the next 4 years in yeshiva, and then I found myself dating. And after dating a few different girls, I came upon your resume. And when we started dating,
what a fast whirlwind! Like,
yeah,
whoa!
I crammed a lot of different experiences into a few years. By the time you and I started dating, I had only been from for really a few years.
And I remember thinking, like, that's kind of scary. Like, I didn't know how religious you were, because what can happen in a couple of years? I spent my entire life with a religious upbringing. I knew everything, quote unquote. But what were you going to know? Like, that freaked me out. You really were fresh. You were new.
The fear was valid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when I got your resume, I liked how something that stood out was there were two pictures on it. One was you, very formal, as if perhaps you were going to a wedding, and the other one was much more casual, just more like natural. Looks like what you would look like on your day-to-day basis. So I already thought it was cool that you were showing both looks, maybe for accuracy. And
the bar on the floor.
And also I later learned it was your mother who wrote a very beautiful description of you. You could see how much your mother loved you through her words. And I remember showing my mother the resume, and she was like, you know what, out of all of them, like, this one seems like the most you so far. So yeah, so you and I started dating, and I'd say from the very beginning, it went really well. From the very first date, you and I both felt like we really clicked, and from then on, I'd say just increased. There were definitely some hiccups along the way, which I'm sure we'll get to, but overall, we had a really nice dating experience towards the beginning.
Yeah, I remember literally right at the beginning, either the first or second date, I think it was the first, my mother called me after the date and was like, how'd it go? And I was just so excited. And I remember what I told her was that either Meir is my husband, or I don't know if I'll ever find someone like him again. Like I really had clarity in my mind, which was it felt so right. It was really great. I'm so thankful to Hashem, to God, for that.
Baruch Hashem. Yeah, I would say I had a lot of clarity the entire time, for the most part as well. And in my previous datings, I would have a lot more moments of lack of clarity and calling a lot of people and trying to get opinions and being kind of nitpicky. And with you, it didn't even come to mind, because it was just so smooth, and I was barely even, besides for Shadchan, I wasn't really running anything by anybody, because I had a lot of inner clarity. It just felt right.
Yeah. So I was kind of zooming into this aspect that it felt right for both of us, because just a short few weeks after we started dating, my mother had suddenly passed. Literally one morning, none of us were expecting anything. We all had the shock of our lives. I was in camp. I, got woken up by the camp director at 5 a.m. I had probably 70 missed calls from my family members. that my mother had passed. So my world was completely flipped upside down in one day. What was that experience like for you? And let's start from that first moment. Like, what was your reaction?
So leading up to that day, that Friday morning, when I got a text, I was so grateful to Hashem because as a Baal Tshuva, I didn't know.
What's a Baal Tshuva?
As a Baal Tshuva, somebody who grew up not Torah observant and then came to it on my own and changed my life later on. I was so grateful that Hashem played the cards the way he did. I felt like everything was really working out for me. I wasn't sure who am I going to end up with. Am I going to end up with another Baal Tshuva? Am I going to end up with someone who grew up in the system? And honestly, there were advantages to both. But once I met you, it happened to be that you grew up in the system, and it just seemed perfect. And I was feeling so grateful that everything was just so smooth. We'd only been dating for a few weeks, so
Literally.
We weren't, very close yet, especially as in accordance to the way that we date. We make sure that we don't get overly involved or infatuated before.
There are a lot of boundaries that are in place when dating in a Hasidic world, like
right.
No touch, no, you speak from, there's a certain amount of times you speak, where there's a healthy distance that's created so that you can look at the other person for who they are and not for any infatuation. Like
right.
Exactly that.
And we're not texting, communicating between the dates. Like everything's through this middleman, the shadchan. So things were just so smooth. I was working in the yeshiva's kites, a summer yeshiva in Cozumel, Mexico. I would go to the local chocolate in Cozumel and do our dates from there. And then I woke up Friday morning to a text from a friend of mine from Chicago. And he said, hey, I know that you're currently dating Chana Bassman. This is a friend that I think he knew what was going on in my life, a good friend. I was just in the show this morning, and they announced that Faggy Bassman died suddenly last night. And I was in complete shock. I had to take a double and a triple take. Like, wait, this is the mother that you've been talking about in all of our dates.
Yeah.
This is, you spoke about your mother large parts of our dates. She sounded like the most amazing woman. You guys were so close. Like, that was a huge part of our conversations. Like,
sure,
this amazing, youngest child, daughter, mother relationship that you had, and then to hear that just like that, she died. Like, it was just shocking. And I felt, I'd say simultaneously, two things. I felt horrible for you, and I didn't even know how to communicate with you or what to say. Like, I had to get guidance. I was like, what's my role here? Like,
so confusing.
On the one hand, we're so close.
You're not a spouse. You're not a boyfriend.
We've only known each other for 3 weeks. Yes, the 3 weeks have been great. We've really hit it off, but I can't like comfort her as if I'm her husband or long-term boyfriend. Like we just met and it's going nicely. So I definitely immediately got calls for guidance. I reached out to you, I think immediately as well. I sent you a message. That's what I felt was appropriate at the time. This was obviously hours after you found out, and I said, I don't remember exactly what I said, but something along the lines of, I'm so sorry. Like, we'll be in touch, but I'm just so sorry.
You said, if there's any way I could be here for you, let me know, and I'm here, or something along those lines.
Right. And I didn't know how to be there for you, and you probably also didn't know how I should be there for you either. It's a very unique situation to be in.
Did you ever have a moment during our dating period, or within those couple days, within those couple weeks, of realizing, I don't know if I can handle this? Because you didn't sign up for this. I didn't say in my resume that I don't have a mother. You fell into a situation where a once like healthy, happy, thriving girl with 2 parents and a loving family is now a grieving mess. Like, just lost her favorite person in the whole world. Like, do the math. Did you ever think I don't know that this is for me anymore. I'm so young. What am I getting myself into?
I was so sad for you, and I was also sad for me, because I was really starting to think I had finally found
The perfect family.
the perfect family, a beautiful, big Lubavitch family, amazing girl who
doesn't exist. Big, beautiful, perfect Lubavitch family.
Of course it exists. Every family's perfect in their own ways, and every family has stuff they're working on. But obviously you have an amazing family, and I had found the ideal person. Again, it had only been 3 weeks, but I think you and I were both quite sure in our own experiences that this was probably going to end up being the right match. So I was sad for myself. It was like I worked so hard to get to where I am, to get to the point where I'm, I'm a Hasidic Bacher. I am currently working in Yeshivas Kites. Like, I'm dating someone who grew up in the system. Like, it's just been a few years. Like, I made it, and it's like, and it was smooth. Your parents, all the different stereotypes of what makes it difficult. Your parents were together, everybody was alive. Like, like everyone, got along relatively. Like, there seemingly was no real issues, and it was like, wow, like, Hashem, why are you doing this? Like, this is crazy. Like, I don't think I ever thought I can't do this. Like, I might have to end it because of this, but I definitely it was weighing heavy on me what my life was going to look like, because I knew we were doing this. I knew I was going to marry you, but I also knew what that was going to come with and what I was getting myself into. And I wasn't about to escape the situation, but I just couldn't believe the situation I was in. I was like, this is crazy. I never thought I'd be in such a situation. Like, how is this happening to me?
You were trapped in a way.
In a way, right. Yeah. We dated just long enough where, like, I felt that there was no way I would stop dating you because of anything, really. And then this happened, and I was completely trapped. And
crazy.
And by the way, if that had happened 4 weeks prior, I would not have dated you. I wasn't feeling, I was like in a desperate place or feeling like to be so kind and date someone who just lost their mother a month or two ago. Like, I wanted a regular situation. I just wanted a nice, smooth transition into marriage, and I would never have chosen that. So it was really wild how Hashem
just threw that on your plate.
Yeah, really wild.
Wow, lucky for me, that timing.
It was very good timing. Luckily for all of us, for both of us. Yeah.
So fast forward a couple of weeks where, I think it was a month or so where we continued to date through my grieving process, through those 7 days of what we call Shiva, where my family mourns, we sit on low chairs, and we were talking through those times, through that period where, like, and I think for me, you were a comfort, like an anchor for me, that, like, my life is going to go on. This isn't the end, because I just met my husband and I found my other half. We're going to start a family. Like, that was what made me okay. Like, that's how I was able to stand on 2 feet most days.
Right. And I didn't know how you were going to take this.
Oh yeah.
Everything I just shared is true, but I also didn't know if you would continue. I thought that might be it. I thought you might say that you're not ready to date. You just went through this crazy trauma. For all I knew, you were going to want to stop dating, take a massive break.
I actually never thought about that going through your head, but valid.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting engaged and getting married, to condense a long-ish time into just a couple words, but yeah.
And a very short time.
And a very short time. It was we had a 6-week engagement, and then we got married.
Yeah.
So this is the part that I want to dive into, and this is the part that I'm most excited for, because you experienced something that I know gave you so much insight on what it means to be a support, a partner, to carry your spouse's deepest pain And I'm sure you went about it in some unhealthy ways. I'm sure you had a process as to how you navigated it, because what a mess. And I know that every single couple to exist has this in some form. And it doesn't need to be that a spouse lost a parent. It could be grieving something else. It could be postpartum depression. It could be anxiety. It could be anything in the whole world where a spouse is falling apart, and the other spouse, what's their role? Like, is it their role to carry them? Is it their role to, be their whole, like what happens now? So let's go back to when we first got married. What were those first couple months for you? Like, okay, you got into this, I'm sure you were happy to marry me. I mean, I know you were happy to marry me. We got married and both wanted to marry each other. But what were those first couple months like for you as a spouse of somebody who just had their whole world taken away from them, basically?
So I think that we were both on a high. And the grieving aspect and the trauma that you just faced was not really at the forefront of at least our reality as a couple. I wasn't coming home to a crying wife every day, to somebody who appeared to be in deep depressive grief. I came home, you were usually happy, had a successful day at work, making dinner. So I'd say in our day-to-day life, even though it only just happened very recently, things were smooth. I think it's only upon reflection after, realizing just how much you were truly grieving during that time. I also feel like there was a part of me that didn't want to even go there. I'm not saying that was right, but I wanted a regular situation. I wanted us to get married and be so excited that we're married and have a beautiful Shana Rishena. I don't feel...
Just specify what a Shana Rishena is.
Like a first year of marriage, where things are great, and it's an opportunity before we have kids to enjoy each other and to bond. And I don't know if you felt this way. I'd be curious, but I don't remember intentionally doing this, but I feel at least subconsciously I didn't really want to go there. I didn't really want to go there to what you were probably feeling so deeply inside. And it was hard for me when you were grieving. Although I was there for you, and I was genuinely and authentically there for you and wanted to be there for you, you were now my spouse, you were now my wife. And if your spouse is suffering and in pain, you want to be there for them, and you want to help. You want to be there just as someone for them to lean on and to help them feel better. But there was also the aspect that I just wanted a regular situation. So I definitely wasn't digging for you to, talk about your grief and your feelings. And I do remember there being challenging times. I think as you got a little more comfortable with me, you also weren't so comfortable, at the very beginning. So as you got more comfortable expressing your grief,
sure,
then we went there. And that was also hard for me as well, because there was a certain heaviness, obviously, that comes along with that I wasn't holding in a heavy place. I didn't exactly want to go there, but mm-hmm. that was my calling. That's the situation that Hashem put me in, and I wanted to be there for you.
So just to give a reminder to both of our memory, as you're speaking, I totally agree with you in the beginning that we just got married. We were a little bit on a bubble, not a little bit, a lot, and for good reason. We were so excited to start our life together. And on top of that, I didn't want to show you my deepest, darkest pain. So by default, I wouldn't go there often at all. And I remember my siblings would go there so often and crying. And of course, I cried a lot. But my persona was like this. And that's because I didn't want to show you. I don't know. I wanted to be happy as well. It was when I became pregnant with Levi that brought up a whole lot for me. And it happened during those first weeks, you're not feeling so well and whatever. But the whole me becoming a mother,
was so triggering for my grief. Like that brought everything up for me. And when you said you would come home and like I wasn't sad, in those months I was. Like I would be on the couch. I think like I would make dinner, but I was just so sad and dark inside and nauseous, mind you. But I really, really, really missed my mother then. I needed my mother then. So I remember that being hard for you. What was that experience like for you? Like you walk into your house after, because it's valid that people go through things. Like I'm not in any way, because we're focusing on your end of the story, I'm not in any way diminishing my own pain. There are two people in this marriage, and I think that's so important to speak about, because there's a whole another human being that in order for them to be a whole support for their spouse, they need to be a whole person. They need to navigate their own world in order to show up. So I think talking about your end is important. So what was that like for you walking in after a long day at work and your wife is just not okay?
So yeah, there was definitely a shift eventually, maybe a few months in, when you were, like you said, experiencing nausea, and really it was just hitting you, this dynamic of becoming a mother and not having a mother of your own anymore, where things did start to shift and it did start to get more difficult. Because, and something you and I both have learned a lot, is like, it's crazy the ways that grief finds expression. The way that we picture grief is just sitting there bawling your eyes out, but grief expresses itself in so many hidden areas, where eventually, like, once we finally resolved something, it's like, oh my gosh, you're grieving. You know, this is grief. This is grief that's doing this. You're just sad, and the way it comes out. So I also didn't really know you. So I barely even knew you. I barely knew how you even act when you're upset, angry, sad, irritable, whatever it is. Then on top of that, you're grieving heavily. So things did get heavy. And that was very hard for me. I felt so sad for you. And I also felt very helpless in my ability to help you. And you needed someone just to be there for you. You just needed me to be there for you and be completely accepting of your grief and of your emotions, and just to let you feel. And I realized that. And I hope I did a decent job.
Because I was just going to say, like you said, I needed to be there for you. Like you actually were. I would say, like in that first year of marriage, when, you know, and I'll say this, we didn't have kids yet. We didn't have all the distractions of life. So that comes to play. But you were really, really, really there for me, and did, for the most part, just that.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that, looking back, you feel that, and your experience was that I was there for you.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, I had my own whole tumultuous inner world that I was going through. Shana Rishayna, the first year of marriage, brings up so much for anyone. All the different character flaws, negative traits that you may have as a single person that you can get away with on a day-to-day basis come to the forefront. All the different triggers, all the different traumas that you may have been suppressing or keeping down, everything just comes up, because now all of your stuff is affecting another individual who you're living with in the closest way possible. So you just can't get away from this reality. It's just like a reality. I mean, you could hide it, you could suppress it, you could override it, but eventually this stuff comes out. So I was already dealing with regular first year of marriage stuff,
Sure.
coming out. So you struggling with this tremendous grief was definitely hard for me. And I definitely remember feeling resentful at times, because where was I in this picture?
Wow.
What about my feelings? What about my emotions? What about everything that I'm going through? What about when I need support? And by the way, looking back, you did a very good job at being an amazing wife and being supportive, even though you were going through what you were going through. Like, unbelievable. I think much more than most people could be in that situation.
I wonder if it was more of, and could be, and I did take up a lot of space, but I also wonder if that aspect was in your own mind, like when something came up and you're like, I want to talk to Hannah about it, or like you want to take up space as a human being.
Right.
Did you feel that guilt countering it and being like, well, she's grieving and so like I didn't even necessarily have to say it, but you felt unworthy of having those emotions and going through those things?
Yes. For example, like everyone who has a hard day at work. I remember having hard days at work or in Koilo, and like coming home wanting to like talk about it, and like you said, take up space and my emotions be heard. But there were just many times where it felt like there wasn't space for that, almost like unspoken. You were going through so much. You were in early pregnancy. You were in Shanavishena. You had lost your mother months ago. You weren't feeling well. Like there was so much completely valid and justified support that you needed. And I think this goes in general for someone whose spouse is going through something, is that you just feel neglected, and not necessarily even that it's malicious or that anyone's neglecting you. You just, as a person, you're someone who needs to be supported, needs to be loved, and needs to be made space for. And usually the entire focus is just on the person going through the big struggle, the big emotions.
That is really hard. Because it's like when someone's going through something, they have this validity to be going through what they're going through. So it makes it a lot lighter. Like, yeah, you're crying. Like, totally, yes, grieve, do your thing, But like when you're on the other side and you're also a human being and you're pushing down these natural emotions and, all these, that's heavy. Like, as you're saying that, my stomach's like, I feel for you. That's really, really hard. And I didn't even know the half of that at the time.
I don't even know if I knew the half of it at the time, like consciously.
What would you say to that spouse who's on the other side when the spouse is going through, their partner is going through something crazy, and so are they, either because of what their spouse is going through or because they're a human being? Like, can they take up space? Like, how would you, with what you now know, how would you have gone about that in a perfect world? What would you have whispered into your own ear? If you could whisper into your 22-year-old self's ear and say blank, what would you say?
It's a good question. I have a few different thoughts. There needs to be an ability and space for that spouse to really just be able to honestly express what they're feeling and not feel guilty about it. Just that, like, this is so hard, and that's completely valid that this is so hard. Because at least in my case, and I bet this applies to other people, is because, like you were saying, that it feels less valid that you're going through that stuff when your spouse is going through something so much more significant, and it's your job to be there for them. It's so easy to really just like brush off what you're feeling and almost feel selfish and feel guilty for the fact that you're struggling. Not to mention, it's just not even helpful to be
That's going to come and bite you.
Experiencing those emotions, because your emotions are going to lead you to say the wrong thing. They're going to lead you to do the wrong thing and to not be there for that grieving spouse, that struggling spouse. And then it just creates this like vicious cycle, and it just feels easier practically even to just suppress it or just kind of ignore it. Suppressing sounds like more of an active word of the act of suppression. It's often not like that. Just to ignore it, like to be struggling and kind of feel that you're just struggling, and what are you gonna do? And you gotta just keep trying. But then you're also not showing up for your spouse in the best way possible, because it's not possible that you could be going through that much and being fully there and being yourself and being present for the spouse. And in our Shana Rishona, in our first year of marriage, that definitely was the case. I was not able to show up for you by far to the extent that I could have, and I wasn't able to show up for myself as well, because I was holding a lot of resentment and a lot of anger at this reality that we're discussing, of me not being able to take up space, essentially. And what I needed was not even to take up space. I needed to be told that it's okay to take up space, and that it's okay for me to be feeling all these feelings and this anger and this resentment and just wanting to be able to live a normal life. And just I needed my valid frustrations to be heard and confirmed, and then I needed to make an active choice. Nonetheless, I'm going to choose to be there for my wife despite all this. My point is, it has to be an intentional decision to be there for your struggling spouse. It can't be that that's what happens by rote. Automatically, my spouse is struggling, it's my job to keep this household afloat, it's my job to be there for my spouse. No, because if you do that, you're just building anger and resentment, and this reality of you not having space to be yourself and to feel and to live the life that you want just builds up and builds up more and more, and eventually it explodes and it expresses itself in really negative ways. So, but the problem is that's just the reality. There's no way around it. Yes, there's acts of self-care. There's things you can do to make yourself feel better, whether it's sports, whether it's swimming, you name it. Or in Kedusha, giving yourself time to sit down, learn a mimer, listen to a shir.
So what you're saying is that the spouse needs to know that, yes, my other spouse is going through a lot and he is taking up a lot of space. But in order to be your person, you need to know that you need to be honest with yourself with what you're going through. Like, this is really hard for me, and it makes sense that this is hard for me. And I feel angry about it because XYZ or whatever it may be. But you need to get to know how you're feeling about it so that you can then move on.
Yes, and at the beginning of our marriage, I was not doing that. I was trying to intellectually impose different ideas in Judaism onto my situation.
Oof.
Meaning that everything happens for a reason.
Oh my.
Gamzu l'tova, this is also for the good. Things like that. Very hopeful, positive, sharp messages from Hasidus, from Judaism. And it's very clear that's the reality that God and our Rebbeim, our Rebbes, want us to live with. But you can't just jump there. And when you're experiencing something, when you're feeling something emotional, although there are times to perhaps push a thought, push a feeling away because you have a mission right now and you can't let that get in the way of your mission, at the end of the day, those feelings still need to be addressed, and you can't just impose different Hasidic ideas onto your reality and assume that you're going to be able to just jump on board with that and everything's just going to flow and all your negative feelings are just going to dissipate. And I was doing that for a while, and again, only breeds more resentment, and then it breeds more guilt. What kind of Hasid am I? What kind of Orthodox Jew am I? The fact that I am feeling so negative about my reality. If I was really internalizing all of the Torah that I was learning, I wouldn't feel this way. I would be so happy. I'd walk into our house with joy, with simcha, with an excitement. I'd be able to be there for you fully, and life would just be so good. Like, that's the ideal. So not only am I suppressing my emotions, but I'm also not feeling guilty because I'm not living up to what a chassid should be living up to.
Wow. So in 2 sentences, if you could talk to your 22-year-old self, what are you saying to him? What do you wish he knew? He's in a dire situation and is not doing well.
I wish he knew that it was okay to just admit, both intellectually and emotionally, that it's okay that this is hard. It's okay that this is so difficult. And acknowledge that this is not typical. This is not a typical situation, and you never asked for this, and it's not fair. It's not what you wanted. You shouldn't have to be going through this. To really acknowledge all that.
Yeah.
And then to be able to have made a choice to continue my life in this situation. Does that make sense?
Were those two separate points?
Yes. The first point was to truly acknowledge his emotions, that this is such a difficult situation, and that it's okay that you're not feeling like this is so beautiful and divine, and it's okay to be feeling so negative. And then the second thing, which only comes after that, is to have had the ability to make a choice to continue in this difficult situation, not carrying resentment and burden of the fact that I am just stuck in this situation.
Okay, so you were saying to move forward without that weighted package of guilt and denial, and the list goes on.
Yeah, and how can I move forward? How can one choose with real intention and even with joy the difficult life situation that they're in if they're being weighed down by all of these burdensome feelings that they're not allowing themselves to express and to feel and to just feel justified in having them.
Wow, that's heavy. Talk about heavy. That is heavy. So you were the heavy one. I'm kidding.
Also.
You were heavy.
We were both
I actually
heavy.
remember, like, you were extremely supportive. You, in showing up, like in action, you were all the way there. I remember often wondering, like, what is really going on in your mind? You know, like, I was able to feel your heaviness as well. And part of me thought it was just your personality. And, you know, at years down the line, you figure out that it's not. And we realize what that actually was, which is suppression. You were trying to be a knight in shining armor, and you were successful at it. But at what cost?
Right.
And how would that unravel later in our marriage? You know, because it's never going to stay. You're never going to stay a suppressed knight in shining armor. Suppressed knights in shining armor don't do well in the long run.
100%.
Yeah.
And I was not only trying to be your knight in shining armor, I was trying to be Hashem's knight in shining armor. I was trying to be the Rebbe's knight in shining armor. And I felt I was constantly disappointing everyone.
It's crazy. Hashem is God, and the Rebbe is a Jewish leader in our circles. Is there something you wish you would have done different in supporting me, in supporting your spouse who was falling apart or grieving?
You know, the very thing that I just stated that I needed is really what I wish I could have given you more as well, which was giving you the space and being that space for you to just be able to fully express and feel whatever negative emotions you were having. That's the best support that I think I could have been for you at that time, because I couldn't bring your mother back. I couldn't change the reality. I couldn't fix the situation. But I could have been more of a vessel for you to feel comfortable to express your pain without judgment or consequence.
How would you have done that? What does that look like?
I think it's so much less of an action than it is an energy.
And how can someone get there? Like, how could you be that spouse? How can you do that for someone? What kind of headspace does it take to be that energy that's comfortable for somebody else to fall apart in without feeling like they're going to break you? Because I think that's a big piece. Like, at least on my end, I didn't want to break you. I barely knew you. I mean, not barely knew you, but I don't want to break you with my pain, which is probably the biggest piece. Which is probably the biggest piece that held me back from grieving openly.
Right. And you know, I was at times grateful that you weren't grieving openly. I didn't want to go there. It was heavy.
Sure.
It was heavy. It was confronting. It got in the way of that picture perfect, you know,
First year
of marriage that I wanted to experience. I don't remember the question.
No, I think,
You asked me something.
no,
within
you
that.
actually answered beautifully. You finished.
Was the answer okay?
Amazing.
Does that make sense?
Amazing.
Well, you asked me how could I have been there more, and I didn't say that. I could have.
Oh, right. I asked the follow-up.
I could have done that. I could have achieved that.
No, I'm asking how could one? Like, I'm asking more general. What should a person do?
Is it repetitive? Like I feel like it's the same thing. Like
No, like, how do you get to their... Is it that same answer? That, like, you want... That they need to acknowledge themselves and then da-da-da. Like, think of you now. Think of me postpartum. Like, what could you do differently? What could... You keep saying, like, next time's going to be good. What are you going to do different?
Let's get this out there.
Yeah? What are you going to do different?
So you told me that.
Wait, so let me roll that again.
Okay. I don't know
How
if I
could
answered it.
how could a spouse be that space for their spouse to fall apart in? Like, what does one do to be that person in a healthy way?
First, what comes to mind is how one could not be there for their spouse in a healthy way. And that's when you're living in a very narrow, mechandekatness, small, dark tunnel of your own reality, of anxiety, of negative emotions. If you're not thriving and achieving in your own areas of life, if you don't feel like you have a purpose that you're working towards, a shlichus that you're working towards on a day-to-day basis, and you have negative emotions about that, or you have different demons that you're carrying, then it's going to be almost impossible, because whenever your spouse has negative emotion, then that's just going to be frustrating to you, because it's going to bring a heaviness and negativity to your life, and you already have enough heaviness and negativity in your life. And the last thing you want...
Step one would be try flourishing in your talents, in your job, in your other areas. Like, do that for yourself to just do better in your life. It sounds so simple, but...
I recognize that it's easier said than done. But in truth,
What if you don't like your job and your wife's grieving?
Easier said than done. I'm sure everyone can find areas in their life where they can do that. But it's just the reality. If you're not thriving, if you don't feel like you're living your tachlis, your purpose, then you likely have negative emotions about your life.
You're going to snap quicker.
And negative feelings. And the last thing you need is this annoying spouse coming with all their issues. Because why is that so annoying? Not because you actually don't have time to address their feelings. It's not because you don't have the ability to address their feelings. It's not because you just can't address their feelings, don't want to. No, it's because I don't need any more negativity in my life. I have enough negativity in my own inner world. So every time your spouse is feeling negative or expressing something negative, you're just getting resentful, like, because of the way it's impacting.
So I'm seeing a theme. Step one is you have to focus on yourself. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean that in a way of you have to be, recognizing this is so hard. This is not fair. You have to let out your own grief of the situation. And number two, how can I best thrive in my life, in my job, in my friendships, in my whatever it may be, in my talents, in my things I do for fun, so that I can be a good spouse for her, so that I can have energy to go, so that I can have breakfast before my day. Did I get that right?
Yes. And in the step two, the piece where it's, you need to be thriving and flourishing, I just want to add that it can't be about me being happy. It needs to be about me fulfilling a higher purpose. Mm-hmm. If it's just about me and my own self-care, and that I'm feeling like I'm living a meaningful life and I'm doing what's right, then that actually just brings you into your own ego self, and just your own and that just leads to more sadness and depression and anxiety. What really brings happiness is when the meaningful life that you're living is achieving your mission and your purpose in the world.
Mm-hmm. So something bigger, something higher than yourself. Like, this life isn't about you. You're in a relationship. You want to show up as a good spouse. You want to show up as a good person, and you're not doing this so you can have a good time.
Yeah, I felt the need to clarify, because what if like what makes me feel good is marijuana or alcohol, or
hear you.
or going and partying with friends, or just having a meaningful job, but then it's still all about you and about your own feelings. And that never feels good when you're just like, your whole focus and your whole dwelling is on your own self and your own feelings. We all know
that's empty.
That what truly feels good is when you go outside of yourself, push yourself, and rise above your own self, and are fulfilling a mission in the world that's actually affecting the world and bringing holiness and goodness into the world.
Beautiful. So what parting message are you leaving with the spouses? The spouses are the husbands, the spouses are the wives, on both ends, because in a marriage, you're both.
When your spouse is in that space of falling apart, that space of negativity, you have a mission to be there for them. Obviously, there are certain situations, or perhaps one has to choose whether they want to actually be there for them in more extreme circumstances. You know, is this a marriage that I can stay in? Am I choosing, is it part of my divine mission, you know, to stay in this situation?
Wow.
I think that's for a bit more extreme situations, though.
Yeah.
The general day-to-day stuff, and even big stuff like someone in grief.
Addiction.
Sure, addiction, other negative tendencies, anger, grief, you name it. So that when our spouse is struggling, at least from my perspective, usually we struggle, or we're almost grieving, mirroring their grief. We're grieving because we're grieving the life or the day that we wanted to have, that we now can't have anymore. We're grieving the spouse that we truly want, that we don't have because of the situation that they're in. We're grieving the day, we're grieving the year that we wanted, that we now can't have because of the situation that your spouse is in.
Yeah.
And just like your spouse needs just like your spouse needs the ability to fully grieve, you need to also fully grieve. You need to also have the ability and space to be truly honest and acknowledge the pain of the situation that you're going through, perhaps as a direct result of what your spouse is going through. And you can then try to find areas in your life that you can improve, to be living with more of a purpose and to be thriving more and doing your mission. And the more that you build yourself up in that sense, the more you're going to be able to be there for your spouse. And if you're struggling with it, and if you feel there's certain times you can't be there, or it's just really hard, communication is also essential and needs to be communicated with your spouse, you know, in the appropriate time, what you're going through. Obviously, you have to judge whether they're able to take that, you know, but what you're going through and why this is also difficult for you, but not in the context of complaining and whining. Save the complaining and whining for your mashpia, for your chaver, for your friend, for your mentor. Any expressing that you do to your spouse should be within a framework of looking to improve, looking to express yourself in order to improve the situation.
Right, at least for when they're in this vulnerable state.
Right.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful, especially coming from a place that's so raw within you. Like, you're reflecting on something that was so real to you, and this is the exact message that you needed to hear. You're gonna struggle. In a marriage, you're both gonna struggle deep and hard and long, and you're gonna take turns. So what are you telling that spouse that it's their turn to be that space for their partner to fall apart in? What do they do? What now?
You need to make your own inner world a better place to live in. As long as your own inner world is an ugly place, is negative, how are you going to get through the situation and be there for your spouse and be there for yourself? It just doesn't feel possible. And what I mean by that is make your own inner world a more godly place. For me, that means delving into the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Torah, the Hasidus, the inner, more mystical Judaism, and all the messaging that he gives, and really delving into that. For me, that is so powerful and really takes me to a more godly space and really helps me shift my reality to make it more godly. If one does that, they're just able to take things as they come in a much more level-headed, healthy way, because their own inner world becomes more godly, becomes more present, becomes more positive. And then you're able to thrive and you're able to really be there for your spouse. And for anybody, Jewish or someone who's not Jewish, whatever means you can do to basically take you out of your own self. Now, I said before, first you have to really experience your own self and experience the feelings. But eventually, and it shouldn't take too long, it doesn't need to take too long.
Right, like you're not sitting on it for months, like, oh, poor thing.
Right.
You just have to really believe yourself that this is hard, and I'm so sorry you're going through this.
Right. And it's not like these are steps. It's not like you're gonna get through that part and then you'll move forward to the positive. No, that'll keep coming up. But you just have to keep going through it, have to keep doing it, have to keep processing, and then simultaneously be, yes, engaging in your day-to-day achieving and work and meaning that you're doing for this world, and also to be inspiring yourself with godliness in whatever way that means for you. I know what it means for me as a Jew and as a chassid.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful and so relevant in so many cases, not just this. Like whatever you're going through in life, that is a message I hope to take with me.
Yeah, and I'll just add, whenever I feel the answer is just I need to feel better, like self-help, but there's no God in the self-help, and it's just about like me feeling good, me feeling better, me feeling meaningful, I go back in the same circle. Once I bring God into the picture and go beyond myself, that's when the real healing can happen.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation, and I hope we could help anybody going through difficult times.
I think it will. I'm sure it will. L'chaim.
Chaim.